Alright, we're back with another aviation crash course video for Private Pilot Lesson 3, Airport Operations. Let's go! Airport operations can range from incredibly complex to remarkably simple. Airports in the United States are classified by the type of airspace they reside in, at least from a pilot's perspective. There are different classifications for other professions within the aviation industry, like airport rescue and firefighting or engineering and design. Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Golf are the main types of airports within the United States. Each has different entry requirements, radio procedures, cloud clearances, etc. that need to be followed when flying. We'll talk about the details more in depth in another lesson. Generally though, airplanes use a standard traffic pattern when flying using visual flight rules. That's when a pilot has visual reference to the ground. The standard traffic pattern consists of the upwind, crosswind, downwind, base, final, and departure legs. The standard pattern is a left-hand pattern, meaning all turns are to the left. You'll frequently hear the term upwind being used interchangeably with the departure leg amongst pilots, but according to the Airplane Flying Handbook, the upwind leg is actually parallel to the landing runway in the same direction as landing traffic. As far as the traffic pattern goes, there are a lot of opinions about what is considered the safest way to fly the pattern. Different flight schools, businesses, aircraft owners have all had different experiences that led to slight variations in the way they fly. Remember, you don't have to force the way you do things onto others as long as everyone can fly safely. Now, according to the Aeronautical Information Manual and the Airplane Flying Handbook, the definitions of a standard traffic pattern look like this. An airplane takes off and flies the departure leg. Once it's 300 feet within pattern altitude, it turns crosswind. Pattern altitude is typically 1,000 feet AGL. The downwind leg is flown approximately a half mile to 1 mile out from the runway. Then the base leg is made at the pilot's discretion, depending on the conditions, and the final turn is made to align the longitudinal axis of the airplane with the runway. Speeds for the pattern should match the flow of traffic within reason, not to exceed 200 knots. And unless there's a different manufacturer recommendation, 1.4 times the VSO is what the FAA recommends for base, and 1.3 times the VSO is what the FAA recommends for final. This all seems a little hard to remember, but in practice, it does tend to come naturally after some time improving your routine. Landing is unquestionably the hardest part of flying the pattern. If your airport has PAPI lights or VASI lights, the main goal is to keep red over white, because red over white is just right. Power adjustments are made to stay on a typical 3-degree glide path. As the airplane gets closer to the runway, there are a few phases of landing: the entry, roundout, flare, and touchdown. It's hard for new pilots to judge how high they are above the runway, and a lot of times this leads to ballooning when they try to flare and pull up on the controls too hard, or porpoising when they don't pull hard enough. If a landing is unsalvageable, it's always better to just go around. Crosswind technique is also something to consider. There are basically 2 ways to execute a crosswind landing: side slip or crab to side slip. If you're new to aviation, you should seriously think twice about flying in high crosswinds. I usually set the limitations for people I trained at only 10 knots of crosswind, but this could always be different depending on the student. When you plan to fly, make sure you look carefully at the airport's chart supplement and the chart itself. These sources of information both have legends, but I would highly recommend looking at the remarks in the chart supplement carefully. You're required by regulation to be familiar with the procedures for airports you'll be flying to. These rules can frequently change depending on the time of day, or if it's nighttime, if the president is in town, you know the deal. Imagine trying to fly to an airport at night, but forgetting to check if it's lighted or not. It's surprisingly easy to overlook something like this if you don't have a lot of experience flight planning. If you're landing in an airport without a control tower, it's recommended that you self-announce your position 8 to 10 miles from the airport. But before you do that, you're going to need to figure out which way the winds are blowing so that you can decide on a plan of action of how to enter the pattern. For that, you can listen to the ATIS or AWOS. If the airport doesn't have one of those, you usually could pick out the windsock or some kind of ground reference that shows the wind. Generally speaking, there are 2 types of pattern entries to an uncontrolled airport. You'll usually either enter on a standard 45-degree left downwind entry or overfly from the other side. If you're flying into a towered airport, it's actually easier to enter the pattern because tower will instruct you exactly how they want you to enter. Other types of pattern entries to uncontrolled airports are discussed in a handful of FAA publications, but generally speaking, if you can fly safely with other pilots in the uncontrolled pattern, the FAA isn't going to come after you if you think you did something wrong. Remember, some airplanes don't even have radios or ADS-B at uncontrolled airports, so the only method you have of avoiding them is the FAA's old motto, see and avoid. One thing I want to mention is emergencies in the pattern. If you ever have an emergency, you can break any rule or regulation to get the airplane safely on the ground. Lost comms can happen, and if you're at an uncontrolled airport, it's no big deal, just land. But at a controlled airport, you might want to squawk 7600 on your transponder and watch for light gun signals. Those need to be memorized as well. If it's a serious emergency, you might want to squawk 7700 or for a hijacking 7500. Like I said before, every airport has its own quirks, so at the end of the day, if you're familiar with the airports you intend to fly to, you'll be in good shape. Anyway, that's all for now. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. If there's a topic you feel needs more attention, feel free to leave a comment below. I hope you learned something, and until next time, see ya!